Hey there, welcome back to another video, and today let's talk about setting up reCAPTCHA, Google's reCAPTCHA version 3 inside of Next.js 14 app router with server actions. Let's get started. All right, so let's jump to the computer, and here the first thing we need to do is go ahead and search on Google reCAPTCHA v3 because that's what we want, right? And you will find the documentation of Google in the first place. So just quickly open that. You can go through this docs, but we don't really need to. We will go through this later for some stuff, but right now you need to go ahead and open the admin console from over here. So let's just open this up in a new tab. So to have reCAPTCHA on your website or on inside your web app, you need to register a site through this console, right, through this admin dashboard. So it's actually fairly straightforward, and it will give you two keys that you can use in your app to connect it with reCAPTCHA. So let's just give it a label. I'm going to call this a simple contact form because contact form is one of the biggest examples we can use, right? And it's going to be v3 score based. You can also choose v2, which is, I guess, the old way where it shows a challenge, right? But this is score based, and it will detect if you are a bot or not. And here let's add a domain. So let's just call this localhost, and it should most likely work. And from here you can select a Google Cloud project. If you don't have one, you can create it, I guess, from over here. So let's hit submit, and that is going to go ahead and give you back two keys. Right over here you see the site key and the secret key. Now of course the secret key is a secret, so you have to hide it, and the site key is public, so you can keep it public, doesn't matter, we still have to keep it public anyways. So I created a basic Next.js project with server component. Of course this is a server component, and this is a client component, this contact form, which is right over here, because we are using form, and inside of form we are using on submit. So this is a client handler, and we will need some client side stuff in over in here. So all this does is when you submit it, it calls handle submit, which doesn't refresh the page. Then it gets the form element, then it gets the form data. Now how do we get the form data? Well, you just pass in the form in here, and it will take all the inputs with, and it will pick the name, right? So the name attribute, so the name here is name, the name is email, and the name is message. It's going to pick those and give you those values as the form data type, right? And it's just going to show a loading toast with react hot toast, and this is going to dismiss that toast in 2 seconds. This is how simple it looks like. You can just go ahead and fill this form and hit submit. You see this little toast over here. After 2 seconds it's going to disappear and reset the form. First let's quickly understand how it's going to work. So you have your form, which is basically your front end, right? This is your front end code or client side code, you can call it anything you want, this front end, and you are going to have a back end also. So you're going to have your backend, which in our case is our server actions, right? Let's just call this actions, so we know it is server actions. Now this form, when submitted, it's going to send to your backend, but instead of only sending the form data that we are going to have, we are also going to pass in what's called a token, right? So what happens is when you submit the form, it's going to generate a token. So reCAPTCHA, which is Google reCAPTCHA v3, and it's going to generate that token based on your behavior on the page. It's going to we also want to send that token along with all the form data that we have, right? Whatever you want to submit with the form data, also the token, we send all of that to our backend. Now whatever it's going to do with our form data, that is a separate business logic, right? Save it to the database or whatnot. But before doing all this, we need to validate our token. And how we can do that? When we receive that token right over here inside of our backend, we can simply go ahead and verify that token from the Google's API itself. So this is how essentially this entire process works. So you verify the Google API, and then you do anything like save it to the database and whatnot. And if the verification fails, then you go back and respond with an error. So essentially the front end generates a unique token based on behavior, and the back end is going to verify that token through the Google API. And that's why we kept our site key on the front end, because that is used to generate the token, and we kept our secret key on the back end because that is what is going to be used to verify that token. So the first step, this is a basic boilerplate. You can also go ahead and copy and paste this from GitHub. I'll leave the link in the description below. So once you have all the contact form and everything set up, basic stuff, you might have your own. First step is to create the environment variable. So let's go to the root and let's create .env file. And in over here, we are going to create two environment variables, the site key and the secret key. So let's just go ahead and create the site key first of all. And let's collapse this. We'll need the next public captcha site key. So this is what we name our environment variables. Let's copy the site key and let's paste it over here. Then let's copy the secret key and we are going to paste that over here. So I'm just going to call this captcha secret key. Now you need to be careful what you name these two things, right? This has next public before it, meaning this is going to be a public key and the browser or the client side or the user can access this key because we define it as public and we actually want to access this on the front end. On the other hand, this is a secret key, so we don't precede it with next public. So this will only be available on the server side. We'll use this to generate a token and we'll use this to verify that token. All right, so hit save, and this .env is not in gitignore. So let's go to gitignore and simply add .env over here. So this will be ignored in our git. All right, once we do that, the next step is, this is optional but it's very beneficial, and that is to go ahead and install. So the server is running, so let's stop this. We'll install a dependency called npm install. Let's just install it at types /g reCAPTCHA, and we're going to install it as a dev dependency. Now this will basically give you autocomplete, TypeScript autocomplete, or even if you use JavaScript, it's going to give you autocomplete for grecaptcha, and you don't need to install grecaptcha because that's what we're going to include separately in a script tag. Now coming back to these docs, the first step is to load their JavaScript API, which is fairly straightforward. You can just add a script tag, but this is automatic, right? But we want to do it manually because we are manually submitting the form and handling the submission, so we don't really need to do this. If you go down there, you can programmatically invoke the challenge. So we'll need to go ahead and add this as our script tag. So let's copy this. Now you have to go over to your layout file, right? Layout happens to be on each page, all the pages, right? This is the root layout, and right before everything else, you can just go ahead and paste this script tag. Now this script tag is actually, now we need to replace this script tag with the Next.js script component. So let's just change this to script just like this, and we're going to import it from next/script. All right, and we don't really need a closing tag for this. It's just going to be a self-closing one, and we can just go ahead and give it some space. Now we need to add one more attribute or one more prop to this, and that is called strategy. So you can add strategy, and that will be before interactive, meaning we want this script to load before everything else so that the Google reCAPTCHA gets initialized in the very beginning. So once you add the strategy, now we need to add our site key. If you look over here, we need render equals to reCAPTCHA site key. It's actually, again, fairly straightforward. What we can do is we could just go ahead and convert this into template literals by first wrapping it inside of curly braces and then making this template literals. And over in here, we can say process.env dot, and if you go back to the env file, this is what we named our environment variable. So this is public, and let's just hit save. After all this is done, we can go back to our app and let's inspect, and you can already see this pop-up right over here, protected by reCAPTCHA, because we added that script tag. And if you want to visually look at the script tag, it's right over here. You're going to find this script. Great. So we initialized the reCAPTCHA on our website. Now, how about submitting the form to a server action and then validating that this is a bot or not? For all of that, first of all, let's close off the layout. We don't need it. And for all of that, let's go ahead and create a server action. And I'm going to go ahead and inside the app folder itself, I'm going to create an actions.ts file. And this is basically going to include my server action. So let's mark this with use server, of course, and then let's export an async function, and let's call this contact us action, because this is a contact us form. And right over here we are going to take in two arguments. First one is going to be token, which is going to be of type string, and second one is going to be the form data, or this could be anything. Okay, form data, we are taking the form data as it is right over here, right? You can also do validation with Zod and all that stuff, but this tutorial is not for that, so you can handle that on your own. The important thing here is the token, right? We need to get the token from the client side and pass it to the server action. So let's start writing the server action. First off, let's check if the token is there or not. So if not token, we are simply going to return an object with the success of false and a message of token not found, right? Simple validation for the token. And after that, we are going to verify the token right over here in this section, and then do anything with the form data, right? And in the end, I'm just going to return success true and a message of message sent successfully. As simple as that. Okay, now let's go back to the contact form, and inside of this handle submit, let's invoke this contact us action. So we can simply go ahead and right after we have this loading toast, we can go down and we can just go ahead and say const res for response, and let's await this, and we're going to say contact us action. Now we need to pass in the token and the form data. So let's just pass this empty string for now, and let's pass in the form data. All right, and let's go down and say if res dot success, we are going to go ahead and do all of this, right? We are going to just take this and we're going to put this, and we are going to dismiss this toast whatsoever in any case. But one thing is left, is that this token that we need to generate. So let's go over here and let's go inside of the src and let's create a new folder called utils, and here I'm going to create a captcha.ts file. This is where we're going to keep two functions for our captcha stuff. So first function is going to be getting the token from the front end and passing it to the backend. So first we need to generate a token on the front end. When this form submits, a unique token will be generated for that form submission, and that will be passed through the server, and that server is going to verify that token. So first off, let's just export an async function called getCAPTCHA token, and here is the magic. You get grecaptcha, right? We installed the types of grecaptcha. This is how we get this IntelliSense. If I press dot, we get all of these methods over here because we installed those types. Otherwise you have to type it on your own. Now this gives us the ready method, so we can use the ready method, and ready takes in a callback function. So let's pass in the callback function, and basically this is the code that you run once the grecaptcha is ready. So if it gets ready, then you can run all this code. And now to generate our token, a unique token, we need to get the site key. So let's just go ahead and say const site key is equal to process dot env dot, and let's go back to the env file again. Let's copy this, let's paste this. Right now it's possible that this environment variable is not set. So if not site key, we are simply going to return for now, and we're going to handle it later on. And then we are going to generate the token. So let's say const token is going to be equal to await, and then we say grecaptcha dot execute, and we provide it with the site key, and the second argument we provide is the action, right? So this will be the name of our action. This is going to be, let's just call this contact us. You can name it anything we want, but let's just name it contact us. Now it says await expressions are only allowed in async, so let's make this async so that we can use await, and that's how you can get the token right over here. Now this is cool and all, but how do we get this token out of this callback function and then ultimately out of this function? Because we need to use this to get this token, right? And the catch here is that this ready method does not return a promise. So it's not an asynchronous method that you can return something from this callback function and then you get back that. So we need to make this a promise by ourselves. So what we can do over here is simply we're going to return out of this function, we're going to return a new promise. All right. And inside of this promise constructor, we get the resolve method. Now inside of this callback function, what we can do is we can take all of this, we can put this, and so what we want is if there is no side key, we're going to resolve with null. So meaning this this return new promise is going to return ultimately null if there is no side key. And then when we get the token, we're going to resolve with the token. So basically what we did is we took all this code and we converted into a promise. And right now, if you look at it, this returns a promise of unknown. So we can also give it a type. So let's go over here and pass in a generic of string or null, because that is what happens. It either returns you a string or a null. All right. So you see, we get a promise of string or null. Once that is done, we can go above this contact us action and we can simply easily just go ahead and say const token equals to await, and then let's go ahead and call this function get captcha token. So let's just say get captcha token, and we don't need to pass in anything. Now this is going to return either string or null, and we're going to pass in this token right over here. Now this gives us a type error that because this can also be null, we cannot pass it in. So let's go to the action itself and let's say this is going to be either string or null. So meaning if it's null, meaning if this condition becomes true sometime, it's going to return out. So this is just TypeScript stuff. All right, so that's half of it. Now a token is going to be generated. It's going to be passed into the action. Let's actually see it, how it looks like. So let's just console.log the token, hit save. And let's actually do it like this so that we get to see the token like this. All right, let's go ahead and open the console. Let's clear it out and let's fill this form with some basic gibberish and let's hit submit. So the error we are getting is because if you go to the get captcha token, the action name here is contact us, which for some reason it finds to be user specific information. So we can just make this contact and this should work. Let's go back, let's give it a refresh and let's clear the console. Let's fill this form with random gibberish and let's hit submit. You see, we get back a token and this is random token, which is a very long token, and we're going to pass this in to our server action right over here, contact us action. So we get the token over here, of course. Now we need to verify the token. So let's go ahead and create a function inside this file itself to verify our token. Again, this is also going to be fairly straightforward, so bear with me. So let's collapse this and let's export an async function verify. Let's call this verify captcha token. Now, of course, this is going to take in a token as a string because that's what we need to verify. Now, to verify a token, we need the secret key. So if you go to the environment variables, this secret key is what we need to verify the token. And remember, this code will run on the server inside the server action. So this can access the secret key. This is not client side code. So what we are going to do is first off, we're going to get the secret key. Let's just get the secret key. That will be equal to process.env.captcha secret key. And if not secret key, we are simply going to throw a new error. Oops, we're going to throw a new error stating no secret key found. So let's just say no secret key found. So just in case the secret key does not exist, it's going to throw an error. If you go back to this page and you click on the C server side integration, we can actually find how we can verify the response, and that is by sending a request to an API URL. You see, in this API request, we need to send a request to this particular URL, a post request. So let's copy this. Let's go down here and let's create a URL, and we're going to create a new URL and we're going to pass in this string. Now I did this for a reason. I'll explain why. So you create a new URL object. So this is not a string, it's a URL. And because you need to pass in the secret, right? The secret key that we had and also the token. So if you look at the secret, it is required. The response is basically the token that is also required. So you need to pass in these two required parameters in the URL itself. And what we can do is when we create a new URL object, we can just go ahead and say url.search params.append, and we can append first off the secret, and the secret is of course the secret key. We can easily do that over here. And then we need to url.search params, and we append the response, and guess what, the response is going to be the token, and we receive the token from the arguments over here. What this is going to do is going to create a URL that's going to look something like this. So this is our base URL, and this is, you see, we pass in the search parameters. There is the secret, and you get and then you get the response. You can also do it with string concatenation, but it's better to do it this way so that it's more readable. All right, so once we have our URL, we append these search parameters. Then what we can do is we can simply go ahead and use our fetch API. So let's just first off get the response. Let's await fetch and pass in the URL. As simple as that. Now this is going to be a post request, so we need to go ahead and pass in the method to be post, and then we get back the let's just call this captcha data. It's going to be equal to await response.json. Now this captcha data holds the most critical value, so let's just go ahead and console.log the captcha data right over here, just so that we can see what it has. So now, because we need to verify the token on the server action, let's go to actions.ts, and let's just simply call await verify captcha token. Let's pass in the token that we receive from here to here. Hit save, and because this code is running on the server, the console log that we did over here is going to show up inside of our terminal. All right, coming back over here, let's go ahead and fake filler and fill all inputs, and let's hit submit. You're going to find out that of course the token gets logged, but in here you see we get an object with success true, challenge timestamp, host name, and a score of 0.9, meaning this is a human of course, and the action name, which of course we passed it in ourselves. Now if somehow this fails, it's going to give us a failing one. So right now it works perfectly fine. If it's going to fail sometime, let's say the score is below 0.5, that means it's most likely a bot that is trying to submit your form. If you look at this verifying the user's response documentation, where we took this API request URL and all that, you're going to see it's going to return this as our response. It's going to be success, which is either true or false, the challenge timestamp, the host name, which is again fairly straightforward. It's also going to return to us the score, which we solved earlier, and it's going to return the error codes. Now the error codes is going to be there only when it fails. For example, if someone spams this contact form, then it's going to fail. So that's when the error codes is going to return. For now, let's just go back in here inside of our captcha, and let's just simply go ahead and return our captcha data. Before returning the captcha data, we can also go ahead and say if not response.ok, we are going to return null. And because the captcha data right now is any, let's give it some types because we're using TypeScript. So let's simply go ahead and create a type called captcha data. It's going to be equal to an object, and this object is going to contain what we saw over here. First off, success boolean, right? And then it's going to have a challenge ts, which is going to be of type string. It's going to have a host name, which is going to be of type string. It's going to have a score, which is of type number, and action, which is again of type string. Now you might use any of these, but we don't necessarily need all these, but I still include it because it is a type. And we are also going to need this error codes. So let's add this error codes, which will be an array of strings. Now here's one catch: if the success is true, we are not going to have the error codes, and we are going to have the score and action and all of these. If the success is false, we are only going to have the error codes. So let's go ahead and make this type kind of dynamic. So in TypeScript, what you can do is you can create this object, of course, but you can also go ahead and say it's going to be this object, or with one pipe sign, not two pipe signs, or this object. So this is basically, it's going to be either this object or this object. So in this object, we are going to make this our success captcha data. So inside of our success what do we receive? We receive the success to be true. All right, so you can actually just go ahead and tell success is true over here, and we don't need any error codes. And in this case, success will be false, and we can remove all of these. So what we essentially did here is we created one type with two possibilities. It's going to be, if the success is true, it's going to include all of these properties. And if the success is false, it's not going to include any of these. It's just going to include the error codes. Let's see it in action and how it helps. So let's go over here, captcha data, and we can just go ahead and set the type captcha data. All right. Now this function returns to us captcha data or null. So if you go to actions, we simply await verify the captcha token. Let's say const captcha data. It's going to be await this. Now let's say if not captcha data, we're going to return again the same thing, right? It's going to return the success of false and a message of captcha failed. And let's add another if condition. So now if not captcha data, meaning if it is null, then we return this. But if captcha data exists but it has an error, so we can just say captcha data dot success is false, right? So if success is false, or we can say captcha data dot score is less than 0.5. Now in that case, we are going to return again the same thing, success false and message captcha failed, but additionally we are going to say errors, and we're going to say if captcha data dot success, if it is false, we're going to return then captcha data dot, and you see we get error codes directly. So if success is false, which is what we said over here, if not success, then you say dot and you get error codes only. You don't get the additional other properties. So we're going to say error codes, or we're just going to say undefined or null. All right, let's just call this null. So it's going to be, if success is false, it's going to return the error codes, or else the errors will be null, or let's just call this undefined. All right, so this is our error handling, and this is our do anything with the form data that we receive right over here. You can save it inside of Google Sheets. I made a video on how you can save data programmatically inside of Google Sheets, which you can check out, and you can just say like save this form data, whatever the user submits, right over here inside of Google Sheets. So that's pretty much it with the server action stuff. Rest of it is actually very straightforward. You get the token, you get the response, you dismiss the loading toast. Now if it was success, it's going to show the success toast, else it's going to go ahead and show a toast dot error. We're going to show the message as res dot message, which is response.message. Again, here we can do the same thing. It's going to be response.message. Let's go back and let's try it out. Whatever we're going to fill this form, it's going to be successful. Now with the error codes, one more thing that you can do is, instead of making this an array of strings, as in the documentation they provide all of these error codes, and we can create a type for the error codes. So let's do that. It's actually fairly straightforward. So you can create a type. Let's go ahead and create a type for error codes. It's going to be either this string, or it's going to be this string. So these are all the error codes, that it's going to be this or this or this or this, all these error codes. And you can just go ahead and say it's going to be an array of error codes. So now it's going to be any of these, and that way you're going to get extra intelligence. And also, to emulate this error, we can do a little trick, is we can go ahead and modify the secret key a little bit. So let's add some random gibberish in here. Also, we are going to console log the captcha data. What is going to happen is, if we now try to send a request, let's just go ahead and fill this form and hit submit, you're going to see we get captcha failed. And if you look at the captcha data, it is success false with the error codes as invalid input response inside of an array, just like we defined in here, invalid input response. This is what we get. Now that's pretty much it. I hope this video helped you out. If it did, please leave a like, share it to others, and let me know in the comments below if you had problems understanding anything. I'll try to explain it in the best possible manner. And if you feel like this tutorial lacks something, also let me know in the comments below. You can find the code on GitHub, the starter code, and also the final code in different branches. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good time and see you later.